And welcome to today's webcast. We have Martha Hollowell with us today to talk about working with Revit line-based families. Martha is a learning content developer with ASCENT and is responsible for writing all of ASCENT's Revit and advanced steel learning guides. So we're pleased to have you with us today, Martha. I'll pass things over to you.
Thank you, Corrine, and I am glad to be here today and excited about talking about working with line-based families. So this is something that's been around for a while, but we finally have added it to our repertoire, I guess you would call it that way. So what I'm going to be covering today is from our Autodesk Revit BIM Management Family and Template Creation course, the 2019 version, and it's in Chapter 6. So we actually are covering content that we have in the book itself. As Corrine mentioned, I am a learning content developer with the Autodesk products. I've been working with Revit for a long time, and I looked at it. It's like since the turn of the last century. That's a long time. That makes it sound even worse, but it is. I think I started on like 5.1 or something like that. So it was within a year of Y2K, there we go. So anyway, I have been working with Revit for a long time. Before that, I did AutoCAD. I did AutoCAD architecture. I've been a trainer as well as a writer. And before that, even, and still, you'd never lose it, I actually have training in architecture as well. So I'm constantly looking at the world through my architect's glasses. So let's take a look at what we're going to do today. As I mentioned, I'm going to be covering information from Chapter 6. And just for those of you who may be trainers and are using our courseware, I have massaged this whole chapter a little bit. And I made it so that it covers 2D families first. So detail families, profiles, symbols, things like that. We cover that first. And then I've added in this 2D, and it is 3D, line-based families, and we're going to be talking about that with and without arrays and what that means in a little bit. And then it still has the in-place families and shared parameters in this particular chapter as well. Now, I do want to say before I get started and what I'm covering, I'm assuming knowledge of families. So that's chapters 3, 4, and 5 before you get to Chapter 6 of creating the families. And so I am assuming some of that today. If you don't, you might get, if you get a little lost, don't worry. If you are getting the training guide, it covers all of the things that I'm going to be running through in this class. So what is a line-based family? It's basically any family where you pick 2 points to place it. So that might be, for example, I've got an example down here that's a little gypsum wall board. You basically pick the first point, you pick the last point, and it draws that, in this case, a filled region in between the 2 points that you pick. It can also be an array of items. So, for example, this is a solar panel array that I've created, and when you pick the 2 points, you put in a certain number of panels, ever how many the length is that you create that. So what I'm going to do today is spend a bit of time first on doing a basic line-based family that's fairly simple, and that can be either 2D or 3D. So I'm going to give you an example of each. And then once we've got the simple ones under our belt, and that's when I'll wait and say, okay, any questions at this point? Then I'll go into the arrays because they are quite a bit more challenging to create and need a little bit more thought. So the first thing is that whenever you start a family, you're basing it off of a template, and that template has some information already in it. And so, if I do a casework family, it's got certain things. If I do a structural column family, it's got other things. If I do a plumbing fixture, it has other things. So the templates don't have necessarily the actual objects that you want in it, but it has all of the background information that you need. And so for line-based families, what it has is a couple of the reference planes a reference line, you can see that solid line is a reference line, and a dimension that has a label on it. So that's what comes in. And that's true for all of the different line-based families. You have your detail item, your generic model for 3D, and a special one for structural stiffeners. And I did not check the structural stiffeners. I'm assuming, I don't know if there's something else going on in there, that had to be a separate one, and it might be it just you couldn't assign it. So that, anyway, there's structural stiffeners that are line-based too. So as I said, what I'm going to do is actually take some information that we have in our course. So these are two of the practices that we have, and I'm going to actually build these practices for you so you can see the process of doing it. So as I'm doing the practices, you can see the steps. I'm going to do one that is a detail family, that little bit of gypsum wallboard that's going to be just 2D. And then I'm going to do another one that's electrical trunking, which is like if you're putting a strip of power across an existing wall or something, that's what you put it in as. I'm going to do another one of those, and that's a 3D sweep. So let me switch over to AutoCAD. Good glory. Man, I didn't know how I even said that word anymore. That's kind of bad. So Revit, let's switch over to Revit. I'm going to close this guy for a minute, and I do want to show you one other interesting little thing. If you have got Revit 2019.1, the home screen looks different. For one thing, it's whiter than the other one, which I think was blacker. Now I'm forgetting what it looks like. But it's the exact same information is there. You still can open models. You can open and start new families. So just so you'll know that this does look a little different because I'm in 2019.1. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new family. And as you can see as I scroll down, I have my detail items line-based family, and I'm going to click Open. So here's my information. As I mentioned before, you've got reference planes, you've got the reference line that's there, and you've got your dimension that's labeled with the length dimension. So all those come with the default information. Just like in any family, the first thing you want to do is create your framework, which is additional reference planes, additional dimensions if you need those. So I'm going to pick my reference plane command here, and I'm going to draw another reference plane. And then I'm going to come to my dimension command and dimension it. At this point in time, I really don't mind what that dimension is. I'm going to assign that later, and you'll be able to see why I'm choosing to assign it later. But I do want to label it. And to label a dimension in a family, you select it, and then up in the ribbon, you're going to pick Create Parameter. And I'm going to call this parameter thickness. In this case, I want it to be a type parameter because I'm going to assign the thickness by type. So I click OK. And you can see here now that my thickness is right there. Then once you have your parameters, and this is all I'm going to do in this particular case, is I'm going to add a detail item. So when I come to my Create tab over here, because I'm in a detail family, it's giving me options for details. And you can see here I can draw lines, I can add detail components, I can do things that are just detail related. And what I'm going to do is add a filled region. In my filled region, I'm going to use a rectangle. Come over here and grab my rectangle. Very important when you're working, making sure you are snapping to your intersections of your reference planes, because that's what is so important. And down here, I don't want the end point. I actually want the intersection. So I'm going to override my snap, and I do that by typing SI. So SI is snap intersection. And so it found that intersection. The other thing I need to do is lock it into place, because I want the length and the thickness to control what's in this. So I need to lock it into place against those reference planes. Again, that's pretty standard operating procedure when you're working with your families. I can click OK or finish edit mode here if I want, or I could first come in and pick my filled region. It really doesn't matter which way you do it. I'm going to pick my filled region here. I wanted it to be gypsum, and I'm going to click finish edit mode. And there you can see my little filled region. Now this is actually all I'm going to do in this example, because I could build it on more, things like that. But in this case, all I want is that one filled region, because I want to be able to add in the information there. Now another thing that you always want to do when you are testing your families is to what we call flex the framework. You can do that by either changing the information right there. So I just changed my length. I'm going to change it to 3 feet. And it's always, by the way, a good idea to make it smaller and larger than what you've worked in, so you can make sure that the information is doing what you're expecting. So I went ahead and just changed my length and made it smaller and larger, and I'm going to go back to 4 feet there. The other thing you can do, I'm going to move this over a little bit, is to use your family types to flex. And so here I'm going to come in and my thickness, I want this to be 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to apply it. And you can see now why I didn't care about my height a minute ago. I wanted to make sure everything else was working. But now I've got my height in. Let me, yeah, it looked a little weird. Oh, it was probably just the form. It just, 5/8 is very short, so wasn't sure I could see what I wanted it to do. And then, as I mentioned, in this case, I wanted to make some types. So, and I wanted that thickness to be set by the type. So I'm going to do a quick creation of 3 types. I'm going to do 5/8 gypsum wallboard and apply that. So that just took the one that I had already. I'm going to do 1/2 inch, change this to 1/2 inch, and apply it. And then I'm going to do one more of 1/4 of an inch, change this to 1/4 of an inch, and apply that. Now, again, I always like to check them and make sure. I don't know, can you see what's happening over here? There, my numbers updating as expected. Oh, I didn't put the GW. Actually, I don't need the GWB there because I'm going to name it and the file that I'm in, and it'll have GWB in the name. So anyway, that looks good. I'm happy with what it's doing right there. I need to go ahead and save it. So I am going to save this, and I'm going to call it GWB. I'm just going to call it GWB because I can't think of another name. Now, it's always important when you do a family, not only to test it within the family, everything looks like it's doing well here, but what does it do in an actual project? So I'm going to open a project, and yes, it came to the right place. I'm going to go to my fire station link here. This is my architectural drawing that I'm working in at the moment. And I have actually created a section in here, so I'm going to be opening up this section. And so this is a place that you would put a detail. And the wall has a lot of that information in it too, but I want to have, like maybe I'm making a soffit or something, and I want to add in my gypsum wallboard. Oh, shoot, I just remembered. I forgot something. All right, one more thing here, and it's going to impact it when I actually bring it into the drawing, so let's fix it first. Back in my frame file, my family file, I want to add a control, a flip arrow, because I can't tell you how often I actually have, I draw the line the way I want to draw it, and it really wants to be going the other way. So having a flip arrow is an important thing to include in something like this. So let me go ahead and save that. And now since I'm in here, I'm going to load it into my project. In this case, I actually had something in there named that, so I'm going to overwrite it. And then I'm going to go into my section. So now what I use to add this in is a detail component. So not a regular component, but a detail component because I made it with that detail prototype. And there you go. There's my GWB. I did a test in here before, so that's the other one. But there you go. You can see there's my 1, 2, and 5/8 inch that I just drew. And let's say I want to come in here and draw, something. I'm starting to do a detail for a soffit. So there it was. I just had my 2 lines. I just went pick, and I got my lines in. I can do another one. Let's say I wanted to put this needed to have some soundproofing or something like that. And so I'm going to put an additional 1/2 inch on it. And there you can see I've actually got it going the wrong way. Before I pick, I can actually hit spacebar to flip it. Or if I pick it and realize, oh, it's the wrong direction, now I have my flip that I can do as well. So there's my gypboard, and I can just use that to modify the rest of my sample or my detail that I'm creating right there. Now, one downside to these is they do not curve. Right now, you can only do 2 points. It's a straight line. So if I'm making a real fancy-dancy little soffit in there and I want to show that, I probably would have to do that either doing just detailed lines, individual lines, or by doing an in-place family to create something along that line if I had curves in it. So that's a simple line-based family that's 2D. Let me do one now that is 3D. And so it's going to be basically the same sort of thing. I'm going to close this and this and this. Sure, we'll save that. All right, I'm going to start a new family again, and this time I'm going to use the generic model line-based family. So there it is, generic model line-based, almost the exact same thing that we had before. And but the big difference now is I can actually add forms in here. So you can see here I'm on my Create tab. So I have all my forms. I have all my model options. I have connectors, all these things that I can do in a 3D item as well. But it is the same exact information otherwise. So what I'm going to do in this case is create a sweep. So I'm going to come in here to sweep. The first thing I want to do is sketch the path, and I want it to be along the length. And remember, I'm going to type SI to get the snap in there. So I'm getting my intersection SI, and I want to go ahead and lock it. Then you can see, and I'm going to hit, oh, by the way, hit Finish Edit Mode, because that's all the thing I'm doing right now. This is where my profile is going to be, and let me just open a 3D view there as well. And I'm typing WT to window tile and ZA to zoom all. So I do a lot of shortcuts like that. So it was WT that let me get the two things side by side. So now I want to select my profile. So I'm going to come up here now to select profile. And I'm going to load a profile that I've already drawn. So I'm going to load profile, and it is in my line-based families, my trunking profile. So this is an existing profile that I've created already. I'll click OK. And then once I have it loaded, I need to select it. So I came back up here to my select profile. I'm now using my trunking profile, and you can see the profile. You can't see it as well over here, but there it is. If I needed to flip this or have it at another direction, I could do that. I can, have offsets and a lot of different things happening there. So depending on how the profile's made, how do I want it in the file, I can make those options as well. I'm going to pick Finish Edit Mode, and there we go. I have my little trunking profile. So there's the profile is extended, and you can see a little bit more of the, see if it shows better shaded, a little bit more of what it looks like. Now with it, it's still in here, I can do things like assign it a category of material. So for example, I want this to be, let's see, I want it to be plastic. Let's do, I don't have it up there. Let me come down here. Plastic. I wanted to, there was a white one in here I looked the other day. It's kind of like a white plastic. There we go. So here's plastic. I'm going to pop that up on in here. So if you haven't used materials before, I'm getting something out of the AEC materials library and applying it into my document. So there's my plastic, and I'll click OK. It doesn't look any different. I meant to have white plastic, but that's okay. You can see the process of actually getting that in place. Well, let me just check here to make sure I've covered everything. Oh, I haven't flexed it. I haven't added a flip thing. So there it is. Okay, that looks good. 5 feet, 3 feet. That's looking good. 4 feet. Let me go ahead and add my flip. Coming over to my Create tab, Control, and I'm doing my double flip. Because once again, I can't tell you how often you put something like this in a project and then it doesn't work because you have it going, you drew it the wrong way. This is going to be my trunking line. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and open up a fire station. Oh, I knew there was one other thing I wanted to do. Cancel that. So when you create a generic model, you actually have up here, you can see my family category and parameters. It's a generic model. Well, that may not be what you want. If you want to be able to, put this in the right kind of schedule or, other kind of information that you may need. Unfortunately, there's nothing really good choice to use this, but I'm going to use electrical equipment because it kind of goes along with electrical anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and use that for this example here. There's more to that but at least it's going to give me that option. And let me save it. Now I'm going to open a fire station, and I'm going to open the fire station MEP, which has a link to that architectural fire station we just looked at. There we go. And I'm going to now come back to my trunking and load it into the project. And I need to go to a different view. So I'm going to, right now it did start it right there, and it says, new electrical equipment. It knows what it is. You can see up here. But to place it, I need to be in a different plan. So I'm going to open a power plan. And let me, TW turns me back to my big thing. I don't even know how to get to it otherwise. So I've got this in here now. If I come to my Annotate tab, you'll notice I don't have that because it's my Annotate, that was a detail component that's here. And if I come to my Systems tab, what I need to do is actually come on all the way over here to electrical equipment because I actually assigned it under the electrical equipment line. There it is. There's my trunking line. It remembers where it was. I can come in now, say, to this training room and add my trunking, so it needs to be along this line. And sure enough, it's in the wall. Let's go. flip it out. There we go. And I'm going to make a view here. I'm going to do a camera view from the door looking back. And you can see the trunking line that's in there. Now, the cool thing with this is I can go ahead and do an offset, so that is actually on the floor. It's kind of hard to see in the way this particular view, since it's in electrical, shows. But I can make this, say, for example, you know, I want it 2'6" off the floor. I want it to be closer to where they might be plugging things in, for example. So I have those options. So that's what I have with the basic, simple 2D and 3D examples. So I can go ahead and take some questions right now if there's anything that people have about these two.
Well, there was a question that came in a few minutes ago, and Carl was asking, will the LineBased family trim or extend to other items?
Oh, well, let's find out, you know. I should know that, and I think they do, but let me just verify. So, all right, I'm just going to add a model line in here. So I want to trim. Yes, so it does.
There we go. Okay.
I was assuming that, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Excellent. Well, thanks for checking that. Carl says thank you. I don't see any other questions that have been put in at this time. If you did have anything really quick you want to pop in here, you want to ask Martha. If not, I think she'll continue on, and we'll take more questions at the end. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're good, Martha, to continue. Thanks.
Okay. Hold on. Let me have a sip of water. Hold on just a sec.
No problem. We'll let you do that.
That way I can keep on talking. All right. So now I'm going to do the two other examples of the line-based families that use arrays. And as I said, this is a little bit more complex, and there's a lot of formulation and things like that that you can do to make things work the way you're expecting. And so, but I do want you to see a good couple of examples so we can get a sense of this. So once again, I'm going to do a 2D one where we're going to add a symbol in and create a service symbols array. And then I'm going to do another one that's 3D based, and we're going to do a solar panel array. And these, as I mentioned before, are the ones that are in our practices in the book. Well, let me go ahead and save my files and close the ones I have open. All right. So once again, I'm going to start a new family. And I'm going to start with the detail line item again. So I'm going to start with my detail line item based template. And as I mentioned before, the first thing I want to do is set up any kind of the framework that I need. Oh, and, you know, in this case, I'm actually going to draw a line first because I forget to do it otherwise. So I'm going to draw it first. I'm going to start with my line command, and I'm just going to draw a line. And again, SI for snap intersection, SI for snap intersection, and that. There we go. I want that line in there, you know, even before I start anything else, so I'll get that. Now I'm going to add a little bit more of a framework. So in this case, I'm going to add 2 reference planes at each end of the line that's available. I'm going to now add align dimensions. And I'm going to select one of these dimensions and create a parameter on it. And I'm going to call this text offset. And I'm going to make this a type parameter as well. I'm going to do some types. Now, once I have one, and I want this to be the exact same thing, I select my dimension, and then in the label list, I can assign it to text offset, and you can see it goes to the right place with that. So now that I've got those in place, I'm just going to move that up a little bit, I'm going to add an item to array. Since I'm in a detail family, I have limited things. I can add a symbol, masking region, these. I can add text, those sort of things. I have actually created a symbol that I want to use in this case that will give me my text. So it's not loaded right now. Let me go ahead and load it. And I have it. It's called services symbol. So I actually created this little symbol separately, and that's actually an earlier practice, or it's a part of this practice, but I created it for this particular example. It allows me to place an instance of that symbol, and I'm going to place it over here, kind of out in the way. At the moment, it's just putting a question mark in because it hasn't had any kind of information assigned. So I want to go ahead and get it in place, and then I'll go and do the assignment. First things first, align and lock. Always the best thing. So I'm going to do my align command, align it to here, and you can see there my symbol has that line I can align it to, lock it. Again, I'm going to my reference plane, not my reference line. Align, get my horizontal, and lock it. So my first one is in place. So that's an important first thing to set up. Now I'm ready to array it. So I select my item right there, and I'm going to come and use my array command. I'm going to use group and associate, and that's an important thing here because the group is going to be actually part of what you are working with. So I want to group and associate it. I can set, a number. I'm going to pick 4, and in this case, I want to move to the last. That's an important one in this case as well, because I'm going to pick 2 points that give me the first and last points of my array. So again, snap intersection, so I'm getting my intersection. This one, I don't have to worry about it because it's catching it already. And I have my array. I could, at this point, change the number. So there you go. There's 5 in the array. It's like 8 in the array, whatever. That's the beauty of having it set up to the group and associate. And another thing that's really cool is I can now label this array. So you can see I've selected the array, and by the way, just so you can see, that's going to be the array. So there you go. I selected the array. And now I'm going to select the array lines here, and I can label it. It's in a slightly different place to add parameter. It's in the options bar, but we can do that, add parameter. And I'm going to label this as number of labels. Number of labels. And I'm going to let it be a type. So now we have that additional option. I'm going to scroll this over here a little bit and open up my Family Types dialog box. And you can see here's my number of labels. I can come in here and update my number of labels if I want to there. And let's just flex other things to make sure it's doing what I'm expecting. So there's my flex there. Oops, didn't work. Now, can you figure out why? I mean, not that you can tell me on the phone, but I can tell you why it didn't work. Let me go back here. I did not align and lock this one. So I aligned and locked the first one, but I didn't align and lock the last one, so it didn't know to change. So let's go ahead and get that in here. Align and lock. Align and lock. Let's check it again. There we go. Much happier with that. There's 5. Okay, that's looking good. Let's see, this is 1. All right. So it's doing what I'm expecting it to do now. And I can go ahead and apply that. Oops, I just hit 6 feet instead of 6 inches. That's better. All right, so in here, one other thing that I want to do here, though, and this isn't so much about line-based families as it is about how it really is cool how you can adjust these things together, is I want to get to my actual symbol. So remember that selecting that gave me my array. So I'm using my tab key to make sure I'm selecting the actual symbol. And then I'm going to come over here and edit the type of the symbol. And notice I could set and add a letter here if I wanted to, but in reality what I want to do is have this associated to another family parameter. So because this is a nested one, I need to associate this. So I'm going to cancel for just a second, add a parameter. So I'm going in my family types dialog box, and I'm going to add a new parameter named services. Okay, and again, I'm going to make types out of this, so I'm going to click OK for my types. All right. So, whoops, I put services in the wrong thing. It should have been text. I'm going to have to delete this one. Services. It's not a length parameter, it's a text parameter, and it's grouped under text. There we go. Now I can add that in. So let's say, for example, I want my services to be A. I click Apply, but nothing's happening because this isn't associated yet. So my nested symbol. So again, I pick my symbol. I'm coming up here to Edit Type. Instead of putting a number or a letter here, I'm going to click Associate Family Parameter and select Services. Click OK, and you notice they all update to A. So when you have a nested family, that associated family parameters is an important thing. And now one more quick little thing. I'm just going to make a couple of types, and I'm not going to make a lot because it is taking me longer than I thought, and I still want to get solar panels in here. So let's say this is going to be compressed air, and I can apply that. That's everything I want right now. And then I'll make a new type called, hot water supply. And we'll just, whoops, my text. Do hot water supply and click OK. You can see the HWS changes over here. All right. Save this services line and open up my file again. And in this case, it doesn't matter if I'm in MEP or my link. I think I'll go into the MEP. I have a site plan that I've created. So I'm going to go to my site plan because that's the sort of place where something like this services line would be put in. So let's load that into the project and go back to my site plan. And I'm going to annotate it as a component, a detail component. So there's my services line, compressed air and hot water supply. And then I can just come in here, whoops, I missed, and draw my line. And you can see there's my little A's. And now if I want to use the same one, but I want to put in my hot water supply, it's coming from over here and going here. You can see that it's set up there. Now, one thing I probably would do is I might need to adjust the text offset. This might be too short for these particular examples because once I put it in the site and the different scales and things like that. So that's one of the things you have to do is you have to massage these things as you start using them. Like for example, I may not want my thing to be labeled right there. So there's a lot of different things you can do to massage these and make them do the things you're expecting them to do. Okay. One more example, and we're going to do our solar panels so you can see what happens with a 3D. Similar process of what we just did here. Close that. Let's see, I might just leave this up. Let's see if we can do that. Oh, here I'm just doing another direction. Since I already have a file up, I wanted to create a new family, so I'm going to my File menu, New Family. Another way to do it. Same things happening. And I'm going to go to my generic model. There it is, LineBased. Open. And I'm ready to go ahead and assign what I needed to do here. Now, first of all, in this case, I'm going to create a longer line. What I'm working with in terms of the solar panels are bigger. Let me just make a little bit longer length. And in this case, I'm not going to add any additional parameter or any other framework. Just going to use the line-based information. I'm going to my Create tab. Whoops, a minute. Is that right? I want to add my, oh, there it is, component. Create tab component. And there's no component loaded. And the cool thing here is you can load any component and do this. So I'm going into my Imperial Library here, going down to, let's see, Sustainable Design, my solar panel. So that's the one that I'm going to use. And I'm going to pop it on in here. Now, it automatically defaults to vertical face. I'm going to put it on work plane so I can do it. There's my solar panel. And as always, I'm going to align and lock in place. So here we go, align this and lock it, align here and lock it. So I've aligned and locked it into place and against the first reference plane. So now I want to start the array command. So I'm selecting my solar panel here. I'm going to my array. And again, I set up the same sort of information. I'm in group and associate. I say how many I want and go to last. In this case, is what I need to do. I'm going to just leave it at 2 for the moment. We're going to do a little bit of computations to get the number of arrays in here. So I'm just going to pop it in over here and let it be at 2. So I have just the 2 arrays, and at the moment it doesn't matter. But again, like what I forgot last time, good old align and lock. So I'm coming here to my align command, align and lock, and align and lock. So I have it in place, and I have my 2. Now the nice thing is I do have that array. Let me just move this up, get this out of the way. I have my array. I could put in 3. I could put in 5. And you can see that, whoops, we got problems when you're putting in 5. So I want to be able to change that and have it so that there's a minimum distance set. So it's important to have that kind of information. So first of all, let me label my array. Again, selecting the array itself, going up to the label, adding the parameter, calling this number of panels. And I am going to make this one an instance. So this is going to allow the user to apply it independently when you go into the work. So there it is, number of panels. I'm going to open my family type dialog box over here. And there's my number of panels, and you can see I can change that back to 3. I can change it back to 4 or 5. And I need to do some more work for the length of 9. So I mean, if I had 15 feet and 5 panels, you know, I'm actually okay. Whoops, see it. There you go. So, but what I need to know is the length and the number of panels. And so I'm going to create an additional parameter here. So I'm clicking New Parameter, Minimum Panel Distance. And I am doing that slowly because you need to make sure everything is spelled exactly right when you are doing parameters. So here's my minimum panel distance. And I'm going to set that to 3'6". And again, nothing happens because I haven't associated that minimum panel distance with anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formula. And in this case, I'm going to assign my number of panels with a formula of length divided by minimum panel distance. So notice right now it has, I'm going to change this to 9 so you can see. Now I'm going to apply it. And do you see how it went to 3 right here, both here and here? But if I have my distance of 15 and I apply it, and now I'm getting 4 because my minimum panel distance. If I do my minimum panel distance of 3, notice I'm getting additional panels in there. So this is an example. It's not necessarily the best way that this one would be done, but it's how you use that array, how you add in formulas and additional options to get your array doing what you want it to do. So let me save this solar panel array and load it into our project. And I can actually, there it is, my solar panel array. This is a generic model right now, and again, you could place it in something else. I want to place this on the face, so I want to place it on the face of this roof, and then I draw my line, and voila, my solar panels. And I now, since I made these dimension options, I can have my minimum panel distance, 3'6", and so that didn't happen to change anything. Let's see what happens if 4 feet. There you go. So now I have fewer panels. So I can made that option to set it up for how the person wanted to use it. So I know that this is much more difficult to do these arrays, and actually the biggest problem is setting up, what formulas, what mix of things like that you need as you go into them. But they can be very useful and save you a lot of time when you're doing that. So that is basically my presentation. Questions?
Great, thank you, Martha. If you just want to put up our last slide, I just will cover our content.
Yeah, go ahead and get our information out first.
I'll get our information, and then we'll just quickly do questions. So I'll just go through this one quickly just to let you know, we have our training guides. We call them learning guides now, and this is kind of the formats we have them available. So we've got them in the printed format, an ebook. We have e-learning bundles. We also have instructor guides. So if you're teaching the course, that's something to look for. And we have large volume called digital site licenses, where you print large volumes if you need that. And we're available on our website.
We do accept 5-star reviews on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right, yes. So always welcome, right? And again, here's our contact information. So our website is the very first one there, ASCENTED.com. You can go to that website or our e-store to make any purchases, or all of our social media, so you can follow us there. And then if you have any questions for us that maybe we don't get to today, or if you have feedback about this presentation or would like us to cover a specific topic in a webcast or in a training guide, please let us know. You can email us at feedback@ascented.com.